Hello and welcome. Today we delve into a story that could shake the very foundations of history's most infamous war, an unprecedented revelation about the true strength of American industry during the Second World War. Imagine a secret report thrust onto Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's desk, so explosive that coffee spilled across vital documents, threatening to expose a truth that could topple Nazi illusions of victory. Did you know that American factories were producing one four-engine B-24 Liberator every hour? An astonishing feat that dwarfed Germany's entire wartime aircraft output. What if the Germans had known that the Ford Willow Run plant was assembling nearly 18 tons of aircraft parts every day, enough to outpace all of Germany's military planes combined? Could a single intercepted message from covert American operatives in Mexico City have revealed this staggering industrial might? And what if the Nazi high command had dismissed warnings from their own spies, believing America's diverse and mongrel population incapable of sustained war production? Now ask yourself, what happens when the most crucial intelligence about a nation's industrial capacity is ignored, dismissed, or misunderstood? How could a systemic failure to grasp the true scale of American manufacturing have led to one of the deadliest misjudgments in warfare history? In this video, we will trace the journey from early warnings to catastrophic oversight, unraveling how a hidden truth about American industry was almost lost in the shadows until now. Get ready to uncover the astonishing facts and deadly mistakes that could have changed the course of history forever. The most shocking revelations start right now. Let's begin. March the 17th, 1943. An otherwise ordinary day was about to take a sinister and transformative turn for the German military intelligence chief, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris. That afternoon, a thick folder was abruptly thrust onto the polished mahogany desk in his clandestine office, striking the wood with such force that a cup of fine porcelain, filled with dark coffee, lurched from its resting place, spilling its bitter contents across precious documents. The accidental splash of coffee left dark stains on the reports. The intelligence summaries that, if they fell into the wrong hands or were thoroughly examined by the Gestapo, could have easily resulted in severe punishment or even death for those involved. The men responsible for bringing this urgent dispatch into Canaris's world did so with an unmistakable sense of urgency and gravity, knowing full well that what lay within could threaten the very fabric of Nazi perceptions of victory and superiority. The startling contents of the report challenged everything that Nazi propaganda had promoted so far, piercing through lies and fabrications to expose a startling reality rooted in intelligence and data analysis. A revelation so profound that it jeopardized the entire credibility of German strategic planning. From the high expansive windows of the Abwehr headquarters, a sleek and often discreet military intelligence building, Canaris looked out across the Landwehr Canal, a somber reminder of past conflicts and betrayals. It was here over 24 years earlier that Rosa Luxemburg's body had once been discarded, a symbol of revolutionary upheaval and unrest. Now, that same view seemed to serve as a silent metaphor for the profound transformations swirling within the current moment. A new, dangerous revelation that threatened to overturn the foundations of Nazi military prospects. Holding in his trembling hands with pale fingers that betrayed his nerves, Canaris harbored a report revealing astonishing and unsettling truths. Not merely propaganda meant to mislead, but conclusive, hard evidence that undermined the very mathematical and logistical assumptions on which the Nazi war effort had been built. The report was based on intercepted communications and signals intelligence received from the covert American operatives, still active and working in Mexico City. According to these sources, the Ford Motor Company's top-secret Willow Run plant was masterfully producing a single four-engined B-24 Liberator bomber every hour, an incredible feat of modern manufacturing that dwarfed anything Germany could lay claim to. This massive American industrial complex, responsible for countless vital war supplies, intricately assembled 1,500,000 individual aircraft parts, rivets, bolts, fuselages, and engines, totaling nearly 18 tons of aircraft humbly rolling off the assembly lines with incredible efficiency. A staggering truth emerged. This assembly line's output was surpassing Germany's entire wartime airplane production, which was only trying to keep pace with basic military vehicles such as the Kubal Varagen. a modest ground transport. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz, attentively standing before Canaris's desk with disciplined composure, had meticulously verified these figures from the intelligence briefs. Despite their certainty, the figures remained unaltered, unwavering in their accuracy. What neither man realized at this critical juncture was that this specific revelation would serve as a catalyst for one of the most catastrophic intelligence failures in modern warfare history. This failure was rooted in a systemic inability, or perhaps refusal, within German intelligence circles to fully grasp, accept, or effectively communicate the true extent of American industrial capacity to their leadership. This gap in understanding would prove fatal, leading the Nazi high command to a grievous misjudgment rooted in mathematical and technological inevitabilities they had all but ignored. The warning signs of this monumental failure had quietly begun receding into the shadows 2 years earlier during the tumultuous year of 1941. Back then, General Karl Kohler of the Luftwaffe had presented a series of reports to Hermann Göring, gathered by military attaché Friedrich von Inners in Washington. These reports boldly claimed that American aircraft production was nearing an astonishing 2,000 planes monthly, an amount that far exceeded German expectations. Yet when these figures reached Göring's ears, they were met with outright disbelief. Victorious in his self-assurance, Göring dismissed the reports with a lack of seriousness, even mockery, dismissing the American military as a nation capable only of producing appliances like refrigerators and razor blades, products far removed from the lethal machinery of war. Hoping to bolster his refusal to see the truth, Göring boasted at the Wolfschanze in December of that same year, merely days after the attack on Pearl Harbor that had marked America's entry into the global conflict. He confidently asserted that American democracy and their madly diverse and mongrel population rendered them incapable of effective military production, especially not of advanced hardware like warplanes. He derided the robustness of their industries as inherently weak and compromised, their Jews an internal target of anti-Semitic ideology, allegedly central to the nation's supposed internal corruption, making their war effort untrustworthy and thus unlikely to sustain the massive logistics needed for victory. By the second quarter of 1943, what by late March of 1943, Colonel José Ungría, a senior military attaché from Spain stationed in Washington, found himself deeply involved in covert operations that blurred the lines between diplomatic courtesy and espionage. His role, initially centered around fostering diplomatic and military contacts, gradually expanded into a clandestine exchange of information that proved invaluable for German intelligence efforts during the ongoing global conflict. Despite his official position, which ostensibly aimed to strengthen Spain's neutral stance and bolster military cooperation, Ungría was secretly passing privileged details to Germany, a treacherous game orchestrated with careful nuance. His primary motivation was to secure shipments of vital tungsten, a metal central to Spanish industries. But his activities also unwittingly supplied the Axis powers with detailed intelligence regarding American aircraft manufacturing capabilities. Throughout that same period, Ungría maintained intimate contacts with key figures within the American aerospace industry, cultivating relationships with engineers and executives who were unaware of the true extent of his covert activities. His clandestine interactions with representatives of major U.S. aircraft manufacturers allowed him to glean insights into the rapid progression of American wartime aviation production. It was through these carefully maintained channels that vital, highly detailed intelligence about the scale, technology, and procedures involved in American aircraft manufacturing reached Germany's clandestine agents. This information proved an invaluable asset, giving the Axis a rare glimpse into the precision and intensity of American wartime industry, details that might otherwise have remained classified. One of the most astonishing revelations to emerge from Ungría's espionage was the detailed account of the Ford Motor Company's military production capabilities at the Willow Run plant, a fact that revealed just how far American capacity had progressed by the early months of 1943. Reports indicated that within the sprawling factory, a mile-long assembly line was operating relentlessly, year-round, under cover of the enormous industrial complex. The sheer extent of the operations was staggering. The plant was so large that clouds sometimes gathered inside its vast interior, leading to occasional psychedelic rain, within the factory's high ceilings. An astonishing workforce of close to 42,000 workers, including a significant number of women, many of whom were African American, were engaged in the complex task of assembling what was described as the most sophisticated aircraft ever built, the American B-22 bomber. The intelligence conveyed a disturbingly vivid picture of the meticulous, high-speed assembly line, described in such detail that it appeared as if the factory itself thrived on mathematical precision. Each bomber was assembled from innumerable subunits, sections called sub-assemblies by Ford, where wing sections, fuselages, tail units, and other components arrived from different parts of the plant and converged at carefully coordinated points along the assembly corridor. It was akin to serene rivers flowing into a vast ocean, each stream precisely timed and suited to converge perfectly without interruption. The sophisticated nature of this process was particularly striking, revealing a level of industrial organization that was far beyond conventional manufacturing standards of its time. Many in the Axis hopes had been that such complexity could become a stumbling block, inevitably leading to frequent breakdowns and delayed schedules, weakening American production. But the reports from Hungary painted an entirely different picture. The intelligence explained how Ford had effectively minimized delays, breaking the entire manufacturing process into an astonishing 60,000 individual tasks. Every worker, whether assembling hydraulic lines in the tail section or installing engine components, was trained in mere days rather than months, turning specialized craftsmen into fully skilled operators in a remarkably short period. This standardized approach meant that, from the seasoned engineer to the freshly hired worker, each performed the same uniform operation repeatedly, ensuring both speed and consistency. Why would the Germans be so deeply interested in such intricate details? In truth, these insights formed a strategic part of the Axis effort to gauge American wartime efficiency and identify potential vulnerabilities. If the Germans could understand the scope, pace, and technological sophistication of America's industrial output, they could better plan their military strategies, targeting logistical weak spots and attempting to counter the industrial might of the Allies. Another crucial source of invaluable intelligence stemmed from the efforts of General Francisco Franco's Spain. Despite officially maintaining neutrality, Spain's proximity and political entanglements placed it as a conduit, though covert, for Axis activities. As part of his clandestine dealings, Colonel José Hungría nurtured close links with Spanish military officers and government officials in Washington, often on the quiet exchanging classified information. Among his contacts was a network of Spanish military attachés and diplomatic intermediaries who secretly worked with the Axis, clandestinely forwarding secrets gleaned from behind the ostensibly neutral facade. The intelligence espoused by Hungría included vital insights into American military production targets, especially in the aviation sector. The detailed descriptions about the Ford plant exemplified the extent to which Shen intelligence had advanced, not merely surface observations, but intricate knowledge of assembly line operations, productivity P rates, and logistical gale points. These pieces of information supplied the Germans with a rare, precious view into the American industry's high-efficiency war machine, a picture that, if acted upon effectively, could have offered an advantage in planning military campaigns or strategy adjustments. During an unusual encounter at the Argentine embassy, an individual met with Charles Sorensen, who was the head of production at Ford Motor Company and had played a key role in designing the early efforts at Willow Run. Believing he was conversing with an envoy from a neutral country that might purchase aircraft post-war, Sorensen freely discussed the capabilities of the plant without suspecting that his words would soon be transmitted to Berlin, where every detail would reach German intelligence within just 2 weeks. Reflecting on a visit to the Consolidated Aircraft Company's facility in San Diego back in 1940, I recall witnessing a remarkable scene. B-24 bombers being assembled outdoors under the bright California sun. Each aircraft looked distinct from the others, highlighting how much more efficient we believed our manufacturing could become. At that time, their production method involved about 180,000 man-hours per aircraft, a laborious process we knew could be optimized. Forsaking this patchwork approach, I had pressed for deeper insights into their methods, driven by my professional curiosity as a military engineer. Sorensen, proud of what his team had accomplished, didn't hesitate to share detailed information. That night, I hunched over my hotel room desk in San Diego, sketching a comprehensive flow chart of their entire production process. I imagined a new factory layout. Rather than having workers standing around stationary airplanes, we would adopt a conveyor-like system where aircraft moved continuously past stationary workers. This approach meant that each worker would perform a specific task repeatedly, perfecting their craft through practice, somewhat akin to assembly lines in the automobile industry. The questions about workforce complexity and training surfaced from our side during discussions. Sorensen responded confidently, explaining that their company had established an apprentice school capable of training about 8,000 new workers each week. He emphasized that women made up about 40% of the workforce. Interestingly, he pointed out that women often outperformed their male counterparts when it came to detail-oriented tasks, owing to their smaller hands that could fit into tight spaces and their patience with repetitive work. Furthermore, their diverse workforce was notable. Black workers operated sophisticated machinery. Boys as young as 16 managed supply and logistics chains. Sorensen firmly believed that true democracies thrived by exploiting every available human resource, regardless of race, gender, or age. German intelligence monitored such activities through various international channels, including Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish. For example, a Swedish engineer named Erik Lundberg visited Willow Run in March of 1943 and reported to his superiors that the plant's operating efficiency exceeded anything they could comprehend in Europe. Lundberg observed that the plant utilized about 1,600 specialized machine tools, many designed solely for individual, single-step operations. The scale of investment was massive. Estimations suggested that the tooling alone might have cost around $200 million. This provided German spies with valuable insights, confirmed through ciphered messages intercepted from Japanese officials, such as Commander Toshikazu Omi, who sent coded communications to Tokyo that were decoded by German intelligence. This factory at Willow Run was producing more aircraft each month than the entire Japanese aviation industry in the same period. By April of 1943, German intelligence had collected comprehensive data from at least 17 separate sources, verifying the astonishing production rates. At the peak of this period, Willow Run was churning out approximately 650 B-24 bombers each month, and the overall American B-24 output surpassed 1,400 aircraft during a typical month, demonstrating just how immense the American output had become. Concerned about the reliability of their intelligence, General Alexander Sandy Canary authorized Operation Pastorius, a clandestine effort to infiltrate agents into the United States via submarines to carry out sabotage. One such agent, George John Dash, who had lived in America for 20 years before returning to Germany in 1939, was chosen to lead one of the two four-man teams. Dash's intricate orders from Abwehr Chief Admiral Canaris required him to gather detailed intelligence on aircraft manufacturing facilities before initiating any sabotage missions. In the early morning hours of June 13, 1942, Dash's team successfully landed off the coast of Amagansett, Long Island, having disembarked from the German submarine U-202 just moments after midnight, with plans and missions yet to be executed behind enemy lines. Within a matter of just a few days, overwhelmed by the realities of his mission and the chilling awareness of what he already knew about the immense capacity of the United States for war production, Dash ultimately made the difficult decision to surrender himself to the FBI. This act of capitulation was not made lightly. It represented the culmination of internal torment and the recognition of the insurmountable evidence he had uncovered, which left him no choice but to cooperate. During his interrogation by FBI investigators, Dash disclosed a piece of information so startling that it stunned everyone who heard it, including those players who believed they already understood the scope of American industrial strength. In a conversation that men like Canaris had assured themselves was beyond doubt, Dash revealed that Canaris himself had been told that the German intelligence apparatus in Berlin harbored deep skepticism about the accuracy of American production reports. According to Dash, Canaris had confessed that Berlin officials did not truly believe the optimistic figures of bomber aircraft being produced each month. They dismissed the reports of the Willow Run plant's output as mere propaganda, Instead, what they sought were concrete empirical proof. Photographs before and after comparisons, records of employee headcounts, shipping logs, and other verifiable data that would force the German military leadership, including the formidable General Göring, to accept a disconcerting but undeniable reality. The disbelief among Berlin's senior intelligence circles was so profound that when Special FBI agent Charles Landman confronted Dash with the truth, he expressed overt skepticism, remarking incredulously, "They really don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour." Dash responded with bitter, almost cynical laughter, describing how he had lived in America and personally witnessed the booming production facilities of the nation's automobile industry. He tried to rationalize to the skeptics back in Berlin that if Ford, the automotive giant, before trembling wartime seasons could churn out a new car every minute, then it was entirely feasible that American factories could manufacture a bomber each hour during the war. Despite this seemingly logical comparison, prominent German officials accused him of being defeatist and of undermining morale through unfounded pessimism, an opinion such, they claimed, that would weaken their resolve. Fast forward to April the 20th in the year 1943, a date that held symbolic significance as Adolf Hitler's 54th birthday. On this occasion, the head of German intelligence, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, personally delivered a comprehensive briefing to Göring at Karen Hall, the grand once oceanic hunting estate situated in the rural outskirts north of Berlin, heavily decorated and claiming the aura of opulence befitting German aristocracy. The meeting would go down as all but legendary within circles of German espionage, owing to Göring's outright rejection of the mountains of evidence placed before him. A rejection that symbolized a tragic and often tragic inability or outright refusal to comprehend the reality. Canaris, undeterred by the foreboding expression on Göring's imposing bulk, who by this point had accumulated weight exceeding 280 pounds, spread a wealth of evidence across a correspondingly broad oak table, akin to a card dealer systematically revealing the worst hand possible. The intelligence briefing included photographs, intercepted documents, and reports accumulated from countless sources, carefully laid out to illustrate the harsh truth. The American manufacturing juggernaut, anchored firmly in the banks of the Ford-founded Willow Run plant, was indeed producing approximately one B-24 Liberator heavy bomber every hour at its peak, sustaining this astonishing output since at least January. With a mixture of almost poetic language, Canaris began explaining that they had corroboration from a total of 17 independent sources, a combined network designed to provide irrefutable verification. Göring, a man already suffering from the inherent physical tolls of war, his weight surpassing 280 pounds, reached out and picked up a photograph amid the collection, revealing an endless assembly line winding into the horizon. Canaris, with a mixture of calm delivery and a closer eye for detail, attempted to convince one of the most influential figures in German strategic planning that these realities defied all skepticism. He spoke with measured irony. "Do you take me for a fool?" Göring, dismissing the evidence with disdain, sharply responded that the photographs were undoubtedly wooden mock-ups, serving as props solely intended for propaganda. Those unmistakable illusions meant to bolster morale by showing that the Americans habitually build aircrafts like sausages. To Göring, the implausibility and scale of such production were simply too fantastical. He claimed the Willow Run plant's actual monthly output perhaps approached 50 bombers at best. Persistent in his effort, Canaris produced further proof, an intercepted manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad detailing enormous shipments of aluminum. He pointed out that the plant tied to the shipment was consuming about 16 million pounds of aluminum each month, an amount exceeding the entire American monthly aircraft and weaponry production. Göring, heaving a harsh, cynical laugh, challenged the credibility of these numbers, asking sharply, "Then where are they getting Hitler's reaction?" was entirely in line with his typical temperament, which was to dismiss any evidence that challenged his beliefs without giving it much thought. In a commanding tone, he addressed Admiral, emphasizing a fundamental difference. Although the Americans diligently produced simple consumer goods, like automobiles and refrigerators in large quantities, the construction of wartime airplanes, particularly bombers, was an entirely different matter. Unlike household appliances, Building a bomber requires meticulous craftsmanship, perfect alignment, specialized skills, and unwavering dedication. Hitler pointed out that it took the Germans 6 years of rigorous preparation for war at a time when many claimed that the Americans had managed to accomplish a comparable feat in just 16 months. An assertion Hitler considered utterly impossible to believe. Such rapid buildup, in his view, defied all logic and technical possibility. Meanwhile, General Jodl carefully examined the intelligence reports provided by Canaris and attempted to mathematically evaluate their credibility. He approached the figures with a cautious skepticism, suggesting that even if only 1/4 of the reported data were accurate, the numbers remained questionable and probably false. Hitler, however, cut him off sharply, angrily dismissing the notion that the Americans could have assembled a factory like Willow Run within a mere 16 months after their entry into the war. He asserted firmly that such an achievement was beyond reach, insisting that the technology, resources, and skilled labor necessary for such rapid construction simply did not exist in the estimated time frame. What the German High Command was unaware of was that Canaris, their chief of intelligence, had managed to acquire clandestine film footage that revealed the true scope and scale of Willow Run, an enterprise that systematically challenged their assumptions. Through contacts within American intelligence based in Switzerland, Canaris obtained a direct copy of surveillance footage captured by the Americans. The film was cleverly smuggled out of the country via diplomatic channels in Spain, concealed within carefully shielded diplomatic pouches. When played, the footage displayed, over a span of 5 intense minutes, the entire mile-long assembly line in full, relentless operation. In the film, rows of newly assembled B-24 aircraft were captured at various stages of construction, moving steadily along the lines nestled inside massive factory halls. Day and night, the assembly line remained active, with workers present in all demographic groups: men, women, individuals of different races, each performing their assigned tasks with swift mechanical precision. The camera lingered over logistical details such as a visible clock that confirmed the rapid pace at which the assembly line functioned. This was a revelation that struck the viewers, Canaris, along with his trusted deputy, Hans Oster, so profoundly that it moved them to moments of hushed awe and disbelief. Completed B-24 planes could be seen parked neatly near the assembly area, ready for shipment, with others rolling along in various stages of construction. The entire operation appeared efficient beyond any German estimates, contradicting all conventional wisdom and official reports. A silent prophecy was embedded within this footage. The impressive capacity on display seemed to threaten Germany's very prospects of victory. Yet while Canaris and Oster watched the film in the safety of a concealed fortified room within the Abwehr headquarters, they recognized the urgency of their situation. Oster whispered in awe, "My God, this is true." And Canaris, without hesitation, ignited the film with his lighter, watching the flames consume the evidence of work that could drastically alter the course of the war. They knew that revealing this footage openly to the Germans or their allies would spell disaster. They feared exposure, accusations of forgery, or imprisonment if such information ever slipped into hostile hands. Following this discovery, in November of 1943, the German intelligence apparatus obtained new aerial photographs of the Willow Run plant. These images had been taken covertly by a Spanish diplomat, and once in their possession, the images were meticulously analyzed over several weeks. The intelligence analyst's detailed review of the photographs yielded compelling conclusions. The large parking lots surrounding the plant were densely packed with roughly 12,000 vehicles, strongly indicating that the site was operating 3 full shifts around the clock. Evidence of unparalleled production volume. The photographs also revealed aircraft at nearby airstrips, clearly identified as B-24 models, some already completed and standing ready for deployment, with an estimated number of 47 aircraft queued for delivery with each image. The assembly process was clearly visible through the skylights of the huge factory halls, with precise spacing of the aircraft aligned perfectly with what had been reported by the Americans. Additionally, the rail sidings adjacent to the plant were filled with numerous freight cars, heavy with raw materials, and their steady flow suggested nonstop delivery activity. Hedman Vernard, an astute analyst, summarized these observations succinctly. Photographic evidence confirms human intelligence. Production rates, appear to match previous estimates. Recommend that we immediately reevaluate our strategic approach. Yet when Göring reviewed these findings, he dismissed them entirely, attempting to discredit the photographs as a product of clever American propaganda, such as misrepresentations created using scale models or photographic manipulation designed to deceive German intelligence. Meanwhile, by the time of June of the year 1944, the disparity in the air power capabilities between the Allied forces and Nazi Germany had become starkly undeniable. For instance, the strategic bombing operations conducted during the preceding months meant that a staggering amount of destruction was inflicted on German targets. Specifically, in just a single day, the Allied bombers, including the B-17 Flying Fortress, the B-24 Liberator, and the heavy B-29 Superfortresses, collectively delivered a heavy assault equivalent to nearly the entire wartime bombing capacity that the Germans had accumulated over several years. This significant feat emphasized the relentless scale of Allied aerial campaigns. Every 24 hours, the total tonnage of bombs dropped by the Allies was enough to match or surpass prolonged periods of the Luftwaffe's earlier bombing efforts, such as their notorious attacks during the Blitzkrieg against Britain. On Christmas Eve of 1943, an often overlooked yet crucial event transpired whereby Admiral Wilhelm Canaris received detailed intelligence projections from the Allies, painting an astonishing picture of the expected manufacturing capacity of American industries in the upcoming year. The figures revealed that the United States projected an output of approximately 18,000 B-24 Liberator bombers, 12,000 B-17 Flying Fortress heavy bombers, and 1,000 B-29 Superfortresses, alongside the production of around 40,000 fighters, craft essential for achieving aerial supremacy. When these quantities were summed, the total production forecasted for the year 1944 approached an incredible 86,000 aircraft. To the Germans, this seemed nearly impossible. Such an exponential increase in military aircraft manufacturing, surpassing all previous historical records and collective efforts. A claim that many in the German high command initially dismissed as an exaggeration or even an outright lie. However, the reality of Western industrial output was far from fantasy. By the early months of 2544, the Germans faced the repercussions of their underestimation. General Canaris, who had previously served as the head of German military intelligence, was quietly removed from his position in February of that year, amidst growing suspicions of defeatism and perceived treason, a tragic accusation that reflected the increasingly desperate and repressive atmosphere among the Nazi leadership. His successor, Walter Schellenberg, was loyal to the Nazi regime, but held little capacity or courage to challenge Hitler's directives or to question the alarming production trends that the Germans faced. Yet the juxtaposition of intelligence and history could not be ignored for much longer. Indeed, on the 21st of February, an especially turbulent week, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, a massive aerial offensive against German aircraft factories and strategic military infrastructure. More than 1,000 heavy bombers, including B-17, B-24, and associated support aircraft, caused devastation in a matter of days. They dropped more bomb tonnage in 6 days than the entire Luftwaffe had delivered during the entire Blitz campaign over Britain. Notably, Germany's fighters could muster fewer than 300 aircraft to counter this onslaught. In response, Führung, led by Luftwaffe leaders such as Adolf Galland and Hermann Göring, was compelled to report grim realities, namely that the Wehrmacht's air superiority was effectively obliterated, describing the enemy's dominance as absolute. The intelligence that the Germans had so stubbornly tried to dismiss now was undeniable. Their strategic defenses were crumbling, largely because their leadership had either refused to believe or deliberately ignored the true extent of American industrial might. Amidst this growing airborne chaos, the year 1944 became marked by triumphs on the part of the Allied industrial complex, exemplified most notably by the attainment of peak production at component plant Willow Run. During one specific month, April of that year, workers toiling in shifts stretched across the clock achieved a production milestone, assembling a remarkable 453 aircraft within just 468 hours. This astonishing rate translated to the production of one complete B-24 Liberator every 59 minutes, a pace unparalleled in any other wartime aircraft plant. The large manufacturing facility employed over 42,000 workers, of whom 11,000 were women, making up roughly a quarter of the entire workforce. Additionally, about 3,800 of those workers identified as African American, representing approximately 9%, and about 1,200 were disabled, accounting for 3% of the workforce. Remarkably, this demographic composition directly contradicted Nazi racial ideology, which proclaimed the supposed superiority of the so-called Aryan race. Instead, African Americans and other minorities, subjected to Nazi pseudoscientific racial hierarchies, in reality were outproducing the so-called master race by significant margins, emphasizing the stark disparity between Nazi propaganda and the harsh truths of American industrial organization. Following the war, surviving German intelligence officials bore witness to the full extent of their failed assumptions. The true scope of American wartime productivity was fully unveiled during post-war confessions and trials. General Walter Schellenberg, among others, revealed in his testimony during the Nuremberg trials that, during the tumultuous years of World War II, a remarkable aspect of the Allied effort was the extraordinary scale and efficiency of American manufacturing, particularly in aircraft production, which played a pivotal role in shifting the tide of the conflict. Extensive documentation from a post-war United States strategic bombing survey revealed insights that echoed the early intelligence reports of German agents. Yet the full scope of American industrial strength was largely underestimated or outright disbelieved by Berlin's strategic planners. Particularly striking was the prodigious output at Willow Run, a massive manufacturing facility constructed specifically to produce combat aircraft, most notably the Boeing B-24 Liberator heavy bomber. Over a span from the year of 1942 until 1945, Willow Run managed to produce a staggering number of 8,685 B-24 bombers. At the peak of its production capacity, the plant was capable of manufacturing approximately 600 aircraft every single month. This relentless pace of production was maintained for months on end, demonstrating an astonishing level of industrial discipline and logistical coordination. As a result of these substantial efficiencies and scaling, the average cost to produce each aircraft drastically decreased, falling from an initial figure of $238,000 to a more manageable $137,000 per plane, showcasing how mass production led to economies of scale once the process was optimized. In stark contrast to what might have been expected, an interview with Albert Speer conducted after the war illuminated one of the core reasons why German intelligence agencies included the United States' capabilities in their assessments but failed to grasp their true magnitude. The leadership in Berlin was simply not prepared to accept this information. When asked why Germany did not believe the intelligence estimates about American aircraft output, Speer explained that accepting the fact that Ford, a symbol of American industry, could produce a bomber every hour would require confronting essential truths that would challenge the most fundamental assumptions of their worldview. Such a recognition implied that democracy, often stereotyped as weak or divided, was actually a formidable and resilient force comparable to the total war capabilities of a totalitarian regime. Furthermore, it would have meant acknowledging that racial integration and gender equality, symbolized by the participation of women in fields previously reserved for men, represented not a weakness but a source of national strength. Such truths could also profoundly undermine the Germans' bitter conviction that they were facing an invincible opponent. Admitting American industrial might could force them to confront the uncomfortable reality that they had begun a war they might never hope to win. One remarkable example of the role women played in this colossal industrial effort was embodied by Rose Willie Monroe, the woman who famously served as an inspiration for the legendary Rosie the Riveter. Monroe operated a rivet gun on the B-24 assembly line, contributing directly to the production force almost entirely composed of women, something that was unthinkable before December of the year of 1941, when the United States had entered the war following Pearl Harbor. Monroe recounted that she and thousands of women like her felt a profound sense of purpose. Every rivet they drove was a critical component in the machinery determined to bring the war to a close. Sometimes working double shifts, they even slept in the parking lot between shifts. Many of these women had personal connections to the conflict, brothers, husbands, or sweethearts, who flew these formidable planes into battle. This collective effort underscores how a country mobilized all its available resources, including its women's labor, to ensure victory. However, the failure to properly recognize the industrial potential of Willow Run had severe consequences for strategic decisions. It hampered the allocation of resources and misled military planning. Instead of focusing on large-scale practical defenses, significant investments and resources went into developing so-called wonder weapons, which often proved less effective than anticipated. Strategic planning was also flawed. Military operations were often prepared based on facing hundreds of enemy bombers, but in reality, the threat was much larger, requiring a re-evaluation of tactics and expectations. Diplomatically, the Allies' diplomatic attempts for peace were delayed, partly because their leadership failed to fully comprehend or acknowledge the extent of German military defeats, a misjudgment that cost valuable time in setting the stage for an ultimate resolution. German economists, when analyzing classified and captured documents following the war, made startling realizations about the scale of American industrial effort. They understood that the overall expenditure on American aircraft production during the war, the equivalent of approximately $400 million, far exceeded their own entire investments in aircraft manufacturing from the year of 1933 until the year of 1945, which in adjusted value was about the same. For perspective, Willow Run alone covered an area of about 3.5 million square feet, surpassing the combined floor space of all German aircraft factories, which was roughly 8 million square feet. Furthermore, the plant's electrical consumption was enormous, around 2.5 million kilowatt hours each month, consuming more resources than an entire German city, starkly illustrating the scale and intensity of this industrial hub. As the lessons embedded within history and human cognition run deep, offering insights that remain painfully relevant across generations. One of the most profound truths is that the human mind is often subject to cognitive bias, which can distort perception and judgment in significant ways. This bias manifests vividly when individuals or nations refuse to accept factual or objective intelligence if it clashes with their deeply held beliefs or ideological commitments. In such cases, cherished personal or collective doctrines can blind individuals to the reality standing before them. Historical examples illustrate that when political or ideological dogmas overshadow rational analysis, even clear-cut truths, whether supported by evidence or mathematics, are liable to be dismissed, leading to what can only be described as ideological blindness. Such systemic failure often lends itself to severe consequences. Intelligent systems that deliberately or unknowingly punish or ignore unpleasant truths create environments where falsehoods, comforting illusions, and illusions of security flourish. These systems foster a dangerous complacency, where inconvenient truths get buried in a sea of denial, leaving decision-makers to navigate reality with partial or distorted information. This process can lead to catastrophic misjudgments, particularly when opponents are underestimated or their capabilities are ignored, because they don't fit into pre-existing narratives of strength and superiority. Underestimating adversaries or dismissing contrary data can quickly snowball into disastrous outcomes, as the fates of nations can hinge upon the accuracy or inaccuracy of their perceptions. A compelling historical anecdote underscores these lessons vividly. During the dedication ceremony of the Yankee Air Museum at Willow Run, in the year of 1985, an encounter took place that exemplifies both humility and conviction. Rose Willow Monroe, affectionately known as Rosie the Riveter, met a former Luftwaffe pilot named Hans Rudel. Rudel, himself a highly decorated and skilled pilot, glanced at the bustling aircraft assembly lines and asked about their impressive productivity. He inquired, "How did you manage to build so many aircraft so quickly?" Monroe responded calmly and pragmatically, "Honey, we simply went to work every day and did our jobs," emphasizing the straightforward nature of their effort. She elaborated further, saying, "Nothing fancy. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy, in its essence, isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their best." Rudel, however, desperately held misconceptions about democracy, and he challenged Monroe's sentiment by declaring that they had been falsely led to believe that democracy made the United States weak, that its diversity slowed its efficiency. He admitted poignantly that these were lies fed to his nation, lies that not only misrepresented the strength of democratic societies, but also caused the death of millions grounded in those deceitful narratives. He explained how, on the last German birthday during the final days of the war, April the 20th of 1945, American intelligence had confirmed production at Willow Run once more. Despite being 2 years prior, this truth had gone unheeded. This was not an issue of insufficient intelligence, but a failure of acceptance, a collective rejection of inconvenient facts that did not align with the prevailing narratives. It highlights a fundamental flaw. History demonstrates that nations do not perish from lack of intelligence, but rather from their inability or unwillingness to accept truths that challenge existing beliefs. In the final analysis, this story teaches us that reality is indifferent to perception or ideology. Rational facts, whether rooted in mathematics, physics, or history, remain steadfast. Yet human beings are frequently seduced by myths, legends, and falsehoods because these serve as comforting refuges from uncomfortable realities. The tragic consequences are widespread. Ignoring or dismissing the truth ultimately results in preventable crises and calamities. The report from German intelligence, dated April 20th, 1945, provides a poignant example of such a tragedy. It was the last German intelligence assessment on Willow Run and Hitler's final birthday note, confirming the production capacity that would later prove decisive in the fall of the Third Reich. Despite the report's existence, it was never delivered to Hitler. By that time, he was ensconced deep in his bunker, cut off from the truths that could have altered the course of history. The Nazi regime's defeat was sealed days later, with the demise of the Thousand-Year Reich. Meanwhile, thousands of American bombers, many constructed in Willow Run's expansive factories, rained destruction upon Germany, reaffirming what the early intelligence report warned. History's judgment leaves no doubt that German intelligence predictions about potential American strength had been excellent. The catastrophic failure lay in their collective refusal to accept uncomfortable truths. Such denial and disbelief played a pivotal role in ending the Third Reich, 567, much like how ideological blindness can destroy political or societal systems. This tragic yet illustrative episode serves as a stark warning to all nations. The fabric of reality remains unaltered by beliefs or wishes. Countries ignoring or rejecting facts based on ideological stubbornness expose themselves to avoidable destruction and downfall. The story of Willow Run underscores that democracy's strength lies in its diversity, a diversity that fosters resilience and innovation when acknowledged and valued properly. Conversely, the belief that